You don't struggle with discipline as much as you think you do. You're probably just protecting yourself from something. If you've ever caught yourself wanting to start something, maybe a new business, maybe a new hobby, a sport, a diet, and every single time you say you want to do it, but you never end up following through, or maybe even you start, you take a few steps, and then eventually you fall off. And then inevitably you might start to think, why do I keep doing this? I'm lazy, I have a discipline problem, I can't stick to things, and you stop trusting yourself. But what if there's a deeper thing driving that behavior? What if you're actually choosing inaction to serve a deeper purpose? So, if you were truly lazy on an identity level, if you were truly undisciplined, then this would show up in every single area of your life. But I guarantee you right now, if you were to audit every single one of your mental, physical, spiritual, financial, your career, your family, your social life, every one of those 7 areas, you will find areas where you do show up, things which you do follow through on, things where you are reliable, where you trust yourself to act on your word. So much so that it's become unconscious, you don't even notice it anymore. And what's funny is those same areas where you're the opposite of lazy, where you show up consistently, don't carry the same emotional weight. They feel effortless. So clearly you're not lazy. So what makes the areas where you're struggling to show up different? That's the question you should be asking. What's driving that behavior differently? Clearly it's not an identity problem. And the thing is, everything in life always has an equal amount of upside and downside. The issue is when the perceived upside versus perceived downside is out of balance. That can drive behavior. So whenever you're perceiving more downside than perceived upside, you're going to choose to avoid whatever that thing is. And that's built-in survival. More perceived downside is akin to trying to avoid a predator. So now all of a sudden, the reason why you're choosing not to do something is actually for survival, for protecting your own safety. But this has nothing to do with what the thing actually is, and more so that you're simply running away from a perceived threat. You see the difference? So it's a distorted lens of reality, which is why we always talk about needing to balance out the ratio of our perceptions, balance the perceived upsides and downsides, so that you're out of the amygdala and in your executive center, where you're now seeing things more objectively and more clearly for what they are, as opposed to what they appear to be from the lens of the narrative of your one-sided view of that thing, which inevitably puts you in survival, avoiding predators, seeking prey, and not thinking clearly or choosing consciously, but rather reacting automatically. So, for instance, if you were trying to start an online business and you wanted to set up a social media page, but every single time you want to start, or maybe you have the first few posts, maybe you design your logo, you start to feel a fear of judgment coming up and you never really follow through. But instead of thinking it's because you're lazy or undisciplined, maybe you should start to ask yourself, what does this inaction give me? Maybe I've chosen, a part of me subconsciously or unconsciously has chosen to avoid doing this because it provides me with the relief of not having the possibility of failing and therefore being judged by other people. So you see, it's not that you're lazy, it's that you're choosing to protect yourself from the judgment of others. So long as you never start, you can always say, I want to do this. And there's always the possibility of succeeding and the guarantee of never failing. But in this case, the problem isn't the judgment of others. The issue is expecting judgment to be one-sided, or the possibility of one-sided judgment, because no matter what you do, judgment always exists, but it's not only negative, it's both negative and positive in equal amounts at all times. So no matter what you decide to do, people will always support you, and there are others that are going to disagree with you, and that's natural. If you do decide to start that social media page, post things, put yourself out there, there will be others that will mock you, especially if you fail. Some might even be happy about it, but there will equally be others that are going to support you and pick you up and push you to do better and try again, and others that will be motivated by the fact that you even attempted to go after what it is that you wanted, something that was authentic and important to you. And the issue is that you're hyper-focused on only the negatives, because we have this negative bias which supports our survival. So the key here is noticing that whenever you have these triggers, we typically identify with the behavior. I'm lazy, and you just take it on as exactly who you are, which then obviously filters the lens from which you view reality, so you end up supporting yourself. You tunnel vision on evidence in your environment to support the identity you've decided to take on, not realizing that, number one, it's not your identity, because you're not lazy in all of the areas of your life, it's just in some areas. And number two, it's actually being driven by deeper behavior, and you're actually choosing, maybe unconsciously, but you're choosing avoidance and inaction. It's not something that you're a victim to. You're choosing it subconsciously based on your distorted lens of perception. So anytime you feel yourself coming up against this resistance where you're deciding to start something and immediately you can't follow through, and you feel yourself starting to ask, why am I like this? Why can I never do this? Why am I lazy? The reframe I want you to integrate here, the switch, is start to ask yourself, what am I protecting myself from? What am I avoiding? Once you can put your awareness on this and then seek the underlying trait, the underlying judgment, which is driving the behavior, this is when you can finally move more into objectivity and see things for what they truly are. And at that point, who knows? You might decide you don't want to go after the business. Regardless, at this point, you have a more objective view and lens, and so you can make decisions that are more incongruent with who you truly are, and not ones that are being driven by this animalistic instinct that we have that's built into us. So try it, investigate anywhere in your life where you feel this friction, and look for the reframe. Try and understand what is the underlying behavior or judgment inside of me that's driving this, and break down the identity. Realize that this isn't who you are. This is something that you're unconsciously choosing to do because of something that you've been blind to. So look to uncover it and seek the opposite side. Look to balance it out, because everything in life is balanced, upsides and downsides, positive and negatives. The issue is when our perceptions are not.